Welcome to day 166. We're in 2 Kings chapters 2 and 4. Some cool things with Elijah and Elisha. Elijah finally is gone. He's not dead. He's taken away. So another reason why we think he is one of the people, the two witnesses in the book of Revelation, as he did not die. He was taken away. So we have that story in here. But here's the thing. Elijah takes his cloak, hits the Jordan River, parts the water, just like Moses did at the Red Sea. And then Elisha does something. He has a request. And this is what is so cool about God, all right? Elisha's request at the Jordan River. Chapter 2, verses 8 and 9. Then Elijah folded his cloak together and struck the water with it. The river divided, and the two of them went across on dry ground. When they came to the other side, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I can do for you before I'm taken away." And Elisha replied, "Please let me inherit a double share of your spirit and become your successor." Okay, so you could debate a whole bunch of stuff about this, but what he's asking is, and the interpretation really is that God is with Elijah and God is doing amazing things. So Elisha realizes all this stuff and he says, I would like a double, I want twice as much of God doing things through me. And I think that's the best way to interpret it. And of course, Elijah says, "You've asked a difficult thing. If you see me when I am taken from you, then you will get your request. If not, then you won't." Because Elijah doesn't know. It's not his right to give that. And he doesn't know how to do it anyway. He has no power over anything. It's only God through him. That's the cool thing. And Elijah knows this and he says, well, if you see me leave, then you get it. If not, then you don't. Because Elijah doesn't have the right to do that. So in verse 11, as they were walking along and talking, suddenly a chariot of fire appeared. So the chariot is made of fire, not wood, not gold, not silver. It's made of fire. Drawn by horses of fire. It drove between the two men, separating them, and Elijah was carried by a whirlwind into heaven. So a lot of people say, well, it was the chariot could be made of wood and gold and silver, just there on fire. Really, God can't make a chariot of fire that you can walk on? If you can walk on water, can't he make a chariot of fire that you can sit in and ride in and not be burned up? Certainly God can do these things. Let's stop limiting God with those types of things. So there's that story of Elijah being taken away. He's not dead. And so here's the thing. Elisha's there. He takes Elijah's cloak. He strikes the water. And this is in verse 14. And he cries out, "Where's the Lord, the God of Elijah?" Not, "Where is my double portion? Where is my gift of miracles that I can do?" No, it's, where's the God of Elijah? Where's that spirit that was in Elijah? Then the river divided and Elisha went across. The important part here is that Elisha is acknowledging it's God that's doing this. And that's why I think it's very important that when he asked Elijah for a double portion of his spirit, he's really asking for God to do double the things and the might of God that he did through Elijah to do through himself. Okay, water provided. Okay, verse 21. So Elisha goes out. This is in Jericho. He went out to the spring that supplied the town with water and threw the salt in it. He took some salt. There's bad water that was causing all sorts of things to happen. Infertility, death, poison, and stuff like that. So he says, "Give me the salt." Throws the salt in the water, and the whole water is purified and cleaned, and it's just like that today, supposedly. All right? So, and I'm not questioning that. And here's the miracles. Moses got water from the rock. Water was brought up in pools for the armies a couple days ago or yesterday when the armies defeated the other armies for Jehoshaphat. So water has always been provided miraculously, and it's not the last time it's provided as well. Then I'm going to talk about some of the other miracles real quickly. Oil that is provided. Let's just read through a couple of these things. And then I want to talk about something funny. Oh, let's just do that now. So Elisha left Jericho and went up to Bethel. As he was walking along the road, a group of boys from the town began mocking and making fun of him. "Go away, Baldy," they chanted. "Go away." Elisha turned around, and this is what's so funny. Is like, these are just children. They're mocking him. Of course, we can just assume that these were not good children, and they were not little toddlers running around making fun of him. These were probably children of age that knew what they were doing was wrong and were probably saying very terrible things, not just "Go away, Baldy." Elisha turned around and looked at them, and he cursed them in the name of the Lord. Then two bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of them. What a horrible thing. From there, Elisha went blah, blah, blah. He went on to Mount Carmel. End of story. What a crazy thing. Whatever, maybe that's all they said. That's all it says. I probably shouldn't add to it. So then we get into a lot of the different miracles here. Chapter 4 has a bunch of stuff in it. So this widow has 2 sons, and they don't have any money, and they have very little oil left to do anything. And so Elisha says in verse 3, "Borrow as many empty jars as you can from your friends and neighbors, then go into your house with your sons and shut the door behind you. Pour olive oil from your flask into the jars, setting each one aside when it is filled." So they do this over and over again until all the jars that the boys have brought to him have been filled. Then Elisha says, "Hey, go take them and sell them, and now you can pay off your debts and have some to live on." She didn't ask for money. She's just asking for a way to save her sons from being taken by the creditors. What we ask for is important. We need to ask God to help us through the fire, help us through these things. We think money is going to save us, and okay, go ahead and ask for money. God will give you money, but remember, the best thing is ask God to give you what is necessary to get through it. He had a miracle and made a way for them to make money. That's what's important. Let's keep going. So he makes friends with this rich woman who gives him a home, and is this the rich woman? And her boy dies, and she goes to the Elisha, and so says, "Come back, you got to save my child." When Elisha arrived, the child was indeed dead. This is chapter 4, verse 32. Then he lay down on the child's body, placing his mouth on the child's mouth, his eyes on the child's eyes, and his hands on the child's hands. Blah, 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 blah. Here's your number 7 for your list. In verse 35, Elisha got up, walked back and forth across the room once, and then stretched himself out on the child again. This time the boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Okay, I'm just amazed with the number 7 and how many times it's actually used and what happens when it is used. Crazy, crazy stuff for the number 7. Just want to point that out to you. Okay, let's get into these miracles. There's a famine in the land of Gilgal. Elisha goes out, makes a stew for the 40 prophets that are with him or something like that. And it's kind of, they brought him food that was poisonous, and he changes all that, makes it all better. And he says, verse 42, he says, "One day a man from Baal Shalisha brought the man of God a sack of fresh grain and 20 loaves of barley bread." Fresh grain and 20 loaves of barley bread, made from the first grain of his harvest. There's a famine in the land. Elisha says, "Give it to the people so they can eat it." I mean, I'm sure he's hungry. "What?" his servant exclaimed. "Feed 100 people with only this?" Think about 100 people. You have 20 loaves of bread. You can probably slice that thin enough to give a very tiny slice of bread to 100 people. My guess is the loaves of bread weren't like this. They were probably normal things that we would think that when you bake something, you roll the dough up and you put it in the oven and they make it. either way, you're feeding 100 people, and you don't have enough grain either. What we're talking about is, a pinch of bread and a little bit of grain. That's it. That's all they have. So, give it to the people so they can eat for this. He repeated it, and the Lord says, everyone will eat, and there will even be some left over. And when they gave it to the people, there was plenty for all and some left over, just as the Lord promised. I'm pointing this out because we already talked about the water. Moses had brought water from the rock. We had the pools of water. Elisha brings oil, and they have a little bit, and she just keeps pouring this little bit into big jars, and massive amounts of oil is given. Miraculously, you have food that's being given, quail in the wilderness during Moses' time, the manna that just came up every day and fed, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people of the Israelites every day, and God sent them quail. He's feeding over 100 people here. Jesus feeds the 5,000, and he does it more than once. Why we continue to question this is incredible to me. God can do anything. And these stories, add them to your story list. These stories are important to continue to discuss and look over. That's why it's important to look over these things and read through this and write them down and make note of them and pass them on. So a lot of really cool things in this story. Again, historical things. Let's keep at it. That's your day 166. I'll see you tomorrow.